Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. This is your DC Spotlight episode for April 11th, 2023. Bit of a smaller week this week, which is always welcome. I think there's like 6 or 7 books we're going to talk about in detail, but overall, I thought it was okay. There were some books that left me a little confused. Maybe that's on me. There were some books that I thought were awesome, and there's some books that I thought had potential. So overall, not bad. What do you think, Rocky?
I thought, there was exactly 2 that three. I'll go 3. 3 I liked, and 4 were kind of meh. So, and you could probably guess which ones I liked, but we'll get into it, and I'm sure we'll have some fun, as we always do.
Yeah, interesting. Like I said, to have a second week in a month be so light, but it's not a bad thing. We've talked recently about DC putting out too much content, so... let's kick it off with Wildcats number 6. This is from writer Matthew Rosenberg, Steven Segovia, and Tom Derenick as the artist. Elmer Santos on colors. Ferran Delgado does the letters. Now, this is the one that had me sort of confused. And it's a little, I don't want to say frustrating, but it was just a little surprising, to be honest, because, we've really enjoyed what Matthew Rosenberg has done with Grifter. We've talked about it a lot. That Grifter story that kicked off Batman Urban Legends, which was so good. Here he's taken on the whole Wildcats team, and he's introduced some interesting concepts with the 7 soldiers, and people hear 7 soldiers DC, they think 7 soldiers of victory, they think Grant Morrison. Here are these Wildstorm characters that are filling the role, and they're not being completely honest, and they're working for the Halo Corporation, and one of them's claiming to be Kryptonian, Majestic, or Majesty, or whatever his name is. And meanwhile, Grifter's supposedly dead, and then he's back, and it has to do with a Grifter that was taken from a different part of the multiverse, and his body was substituted, and there's a lot going on that we don't really know, and I feel like it's sort of jumping around, and maybe I've missed stuff, but when I first started reading this issue, I literally felt like I had missed an issue in between, and I haven't. So again, I think it'll all come together eventually, and when it reads in a trade, it probably make a lot of sense. But with a month in between and all the number of books that we read, and again, that's on me. I just felt like it didn't quite land for me. So I'm still gonna read it. I'm still enjoying it. I think the art is solid, if not spectacular. I've talked before about how it doesn't quite have the dynamic impact that I've seen Segovia's art have in the past. Maybe this particular issue with him sharing art duties with Tom Derenick, that might be contributing to it as well. But what I do like is the voices of these Wildstorm characters, how they sound when Matthew Rosenberg is writing for them, whether it's Zealot or Fairchild or Cole Cash, Grifter himself. I enjoy that aspect of it. Spartan, again, really enjoy that. The fact that it's now this whole idea of Michael Cray's personality being transplanted from body to body to body. The fact that he's in Spartan now, he's in this robot. That's fantastic. Kind of a double agent within Halo, and setting up Jacob Marlowe to be the bad guy. That's interesting as well. The whole idea of him as a businessman, corrupt, wanting to almost be, a puppet master behind the scenes, pulling strings and manipulating events. It's interesting, right? Because he always sort of felt, even back in the day in the Wildstorm universe in Wildcats with Marlowe, that he was a little bit egotistical. He was a little bit arrogant, a little bit like, I know better, I know best, and I'm going to manipulate events to have things go the way I think they should go. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. The other thing that I notice is it has a very distinctive font for the lettering, which I'm sure is purposeful. I'm sure if I went back and looked at some of those old Wildstorm books, that it might have a very similar font from Ferran Delgado. I mean, Ferran Delgado didn't do the lettering back then, but nothing quite looks like the lettering in a Wildcats book. So
I never really thought of that until you mentioned it. I guess it is slightly different, but I wouldn't have caught that. So it's a good eye, Augie. That's good.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
wouldn't have
it's
caught that.
definitely, yeah, it's definitely interesting. And the fact that last thing I'll mention is Rosenberg, attempting to really incorporate these characters in the DC universe, which has been tried, 3 or 4 times at this point. It never has really worked. But he's doing it a little more subtly, like we have Clark Kent show up here. We had Superman last issue. Batman shows up to talk to Clark in this issue. So it's working for me. But I don't know if it's a matter of pacing or a matter of Rosenberg having these big ideas and just not having quite enough room to flesh them all out. But yeah, and it may be 100% on me. I might go back and reread this if I can find the time, and have it, read in a big chunk may make a lot more sense for me. So overall, kind of in the middle for me, kind of average. Some had good points, had bad points, but I'm still enjoying it overall. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you in terms of my first impression when I read this. I initially thought maybe we'd missed an issue too, but I know that we don't miss an issue because we review every one that comes out. So I went back and I did look at my notes from the last issue. I didn't take any notes this issue, and this one does really. It does sort of jump ahead a bit because, and I think the jarring aspect of it is the fact that we were very much led to believe that Cole Cash was either dead or that there was another body of another grifter body from elsewhere in the multiverse has replaced Cole Cash's body. And in this issue, we jump right into it. Cole Cash just suddenly appears. He literally just appears in a scene out of nowhere. There's no build up to it, no nothing. He's just suddenly there. He shows up and appears to Void, and Void is in the middle of one of her kind of crazy pseudo-sexual moments. It's really kind of a really off, kind of a disturbing scene. Like Void is sort of this, she's half human, half machine, and she's always into some pseudo-sexual, weird, kinky stuff. and I don't know, Rosenberg seems to enjoy, doing dialogue for that. And strangely enough, I mean, I kind of agree with you that he does seem to have the language, the dialogue down for these characters. He knows these characters, and you really do hit the ground running, and it's funny, and it's kind of funny in that respect, but at the same time, it feels a little bit jarring at times. But I will say that what's really building to a head here is the fact that I read this. I should say I skim read it twice, and if I got it on the skim read the second time, and clearly something's wrong with the Halo Corporation. It's now revealed that Void has been suspecting that the Halo Corporation has been corrupt. Maybe Marlowe is the one behind the corruption. Maybe this Ariana is, and she's planning a coup to overcome Marlowe. Cole Cash returns. Spartan, it's revealed, is actually Deathblow. Deathblow's mind is now in the body of Spartan. So that's an interesting revelation. And so clearly the Wildcats here are, it looks like they were initially being used as pawns, and Deathblow was killed ostensibly because he discovered, or she discovered that something was wrong, and that something was wrong, or that Halo was corrupt, and Deathblow was supposedly killed. But it looks like Void is a few steps ahead of the people that are trying to take control of Halo, which is maybe Ariana, maybe Harlow or Marlowe, we're not sure. In any event, there's a lot of action that takes place here, and there is clearly, there's the sides have been taken. So, but the good news here is that what Matthew Rosenberg has done, is he's created a double-edged sword. If you're longtime fans of Wildcats, you're going to know who the classic Wildcats are, and the classic Wildcat characters are the good guys, but there's more characters in here, and some of them are corrupt and they're the bad guys. But if you're not familiar with the Wildcat characters, I don't think Matthew Rosenberg's done a good enough job of sort of establishing who all these players are. I still would really like that first opening page to say who all the characters are. It would be helpful. Even for me, a longtime Wildcat fan, it can get a little bit, still a little bit, maybe I'm being, maybe I should just be a little bit more I don't know. I should be more investigative and refresh myself on all the characters. But I would like to me, I always compare this to Batman Incorporated. You know, Wildcats and Batman Incorporated, they're so similar in different ways, and they're both of them sort of, I think, almost suffer from too many characters, but that's also, it can be a blessing and a curse. So every time I bitch about it, there's a cool issue that comes along and makes me kind of glad that we got all these characters. But in any event, I didn't mind this, and I'm really curious to see where this is going to go, how the Wildcats are going to overcome this what's happening with the Halo Corporation. Plus, Batman shows up and tells Clark Kent to back off, you know, because Clark Kent knows that something's wrong because of what Majestic's claiming to be Kryptonian. Majestic's not really, he's acting like a child. Something's wrong there. And Batman tells Superman to Clark Kent, please back off. Clark Kent tried to investigate and ask a bunch of questions of Marlowe. So it's nice that we're getting some incorporation of Wildcats into the larger DC universe here. And so I like that Rosenberger's doing that. He's up for the challenge of that. And I got to give Rosenberg credit. The types of criticisms that I think both you and I are giving Rosenberg in terms of all these characters is that he's going big. He's not insulting us. He's not spoon feeding us. He's expecting us to play along and keep up. And, you know, and I part of me respects that. Part of me kind of says, I wish you'd slow down a bit, but I can also respect it too. So overall, I am entertained, and I am looking forward to where this is headed.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, the fact that Rosenberg is incorporating the main DCU in slowly, I think maybe it can finally, I don't know, it hasn't worked in the past, but which is so interesting, right? Because we've seen DC incorporate other characters from Fawcett, characters from Quality, and it's worked. Like, nobody thinks of Blue Beetle as not part of the, you know, overall DC universe. Nobody thinks of Shazam or Captain Marvel as not a part. But I think people think of these Wildstorm characters as, you know, not fully integrated. So not sure why it hasn't worked. But anyway, moving on. You mentioned Batman Incorporated. That's what's up next. Issue number 7, This Little Piggy Part 2, which is so interesting to get just a 2-part story, which actually ends up being really satisfying. It's from writer Ed Brisson. Michelle Bandini is the artist. Rex Locus on colors. Clayton Cowell does the letters. The art was so interesting. Like, when we get the initial splash page, it looked a little textured, a little different, not quite as bright or as dynamic as the art that we had in the last issue. But then as the story went along, I sort of saw it start to morph and look more like it did last issue. It more than anything, I think maybe it's just the colors. I did not go back and look and see whether it was a different color artist this time or if it was Rex Locus last time as well. I really enjoyed the line work of Michelle Bandini last issue, and I do here as well, but not as much as last issue. It's not quite as sharp. So again, I'm not 100% sure if that was on her or if that's on the color artist. You know, just a different dynamic. The art is still very, very strong. Her storytelling is awesome. I love how she sometimes gives us a scene, but breaks it into 2 panels. Like, you know, one image that's broken into 2 panels is kind of interesting. And the way the letters are laid out in that really is a fantastic storytelling device. So overall, I really enjoyed this. And yeah, it's not an exaggeration to say this is my favorite Professor Pig story that I've ever seen, that I've ever read. I'm not a big fan of Professor Pig, but we got just enough of him here so that he seems crazy like he is, but it wasn't overdone. Like, so many times I get Professor Pig stories where I can't believe that anybody would follow the guy, anybody would listen to the guy. You know, here is his henchmen are Daltrons, you know, they're automatons, so easy to understand why they would follow him. Brisson's also setting up some really interesting seeds that have been planted for this idea that Ghostmaker has agreed to Batman or Bruce Wayne's edict that he not kill. You know, he comes across right at the beginning, right in the first few pages, he comes across Batman's rogues gallery that Professor Pig has captured, right? We saw that last issue where he captured a bunch of these villains, thinking that one of them was behind the kidnapping of his mother. And we never do get an answer if it's really his mother or somebody he's fixated on his mother or what have you, because it's kind of not the point. But as I said, Ghostmaker comes across these Batman villains. They're all chained up. And again, I kind of set it aside. I don't think about it too much, but Professor Pig, again, he doesn't really have any superpowers, yet he was able to capture all of these, like even the Riddler, right? The Riddler, who we're told is, basically the most genius level Batman villain. But even, Killer Croc, Clayface, like these are not easy guys to capture. He's got them all captured. And Ghostmaker is so tempted to take them out, to give them the permanent solution, as it were, because he's thinking about all the harm, all the lives, all the murders that these villains may commit in the future. And ultimately he decides to keep his word that he gave to Batman. But you can tell in the back of his mind, he's thinking, man, the next time I hear one of these guys kill somebody, the glove, he tells Nightwing as much, he calls Nightwing. Nightwing shows up with some of the Titans, or some of the other Bat family rather, to go and take all these guys to Blackgate prison. And Ghostmaker basically says, yeah, I'm following through with what I said I was going to do. Know that I had them. I could have ended them all. But I chose not to because I'm in Batman City. So I'm going to let you take them. But if any of them escape, if any of them kill again, it's going to be on your head. So does that mean that Ghostmaker is going to go after Nightwing? Is he going to go after the villains that kill again? Is it both? Who knows? But again, there's some foreshadowing there of some drama and tension to come. Last thing I'll mention before I get Rocky's thoughts is there is a moment where in his civilian disguise, clown or guise rather, Clown Hunter goes to get some pizza, and he gets it from Marvin George's Pizza, and you can see an image of George Perez there, the one manning the pizza. I guess it's sort of like a little stand. It's not a food truck necessarily, but I thought that was kind of cool, a nice little homage to George Perez. So anyway, what were your thoughts on the issue?
I do think it's interesting, as you said, that Ghostmaker is sort of, he seriously contemplated, killing all Batman's rogues, or at least, I suppose you could argue that he was just doing that to piss off or to scare the Riddler, but then he repeated the same thing to Nightwing. I don't know if he was just posturing or what have you. He's Ghostmaker, by his own right, has his own fortune. He's a multi-billionaire in his own right. He doesn't need Wayne money. He doesn't need Wayne. He can arguably, I think I might be wrong, but I think Ghostmaker is even financing a lot of the Ghost Batman Incorporated. And it's rather curious. Why is he doing all this? And more to the point, what makes Ghostmaker's comments almost paradoxical is that at the end of the issue, he actually gives Clown Hunter a compliment because Clown Hunter did a good job tracking down Mr. Pig in his own right, and so he gives him a compliment. And then at the same time, he's turning around and he's expressing some desire to use lethal force. And what makes that interesting is that by far, it would seem to me that, as far as I can tell, every single member of Batman Incorporated ascribes to Batman's ideology of not killing, of not using lethal force. So Ghostmaker would literally be an outlier in his own team if he was to somehow ascribe to that or somehow make an about face. And so it's interesting that writer Ed Brisson is teasing that. Makes you wonder, where is this going to be headed? Frankly, I wouldn't mind Ghostmaker taking a little bit more of an anti-hero turn, to be quite blunt. We already have one Batman. Why not have him? Why not explore that a little bit? I think it's interesting. So I do like that. There is one final point that last issue we met Gyro's father, and which was kind of almost out of the blue because it was outside the main narrative here of the Mr. Pig narrative. And it appears that this is leading into Joker Incorporated. About 2 or 3 issues ago, we met a group of clowns that appeared to be, they were Joker Incorporated. And a character here at the end by the name of Dusty Bronco ends up murdering Gyro's father at the end. And so clearly that's going to have consequences. And I'm not really sure. It looks like this Dusty Bronco wants to also kill Gyro as well. The idea of Joker Incorporated, because we have Batman Incorporated, I do think is a little bit kind of maybe a little bit corny, but I suppose inevitable. You know, what do you do when you don't have enough Joker and Batman books? You got Batman Incorporated and Joker Incorporated, so you can get different kinds of Jokers and different kinds of Batman, right? Of course, because that's so original. But in fairness, Ed Brislin's doing a good job here, keeping me entertained. I want to give a shout out. There is an alternate cover, a variant cover. I don't know if it's cover C. It actually shows Dusty Bronco. It's probably, I'm guessing, I don't know. Maybe that is his first cover appearance. Speculator alert. I don't think Dusty Bronco's been on a cover yet. I think this is the first time that we met Dusty Bronco, but we may have saw Dusty Bronco on the final page. I think last issue or the issue before, where it teased Joker Incorporated. So this is has been a series with consequences. Has been decent character work, and I like comparing Ed Brisson and Matthew Rosenberg. I think they're both doing competent jobs. I'd still say I'll give Ed Brisson the slight advantage in terms of keeping me entertained with handling so many characters. But Matthew Rosenberg does tend to make me laugh a little bit more. I don't mind his humor, some of it, not all of it. And so it's not a bad issue.
Yeah, and again, I was really pleasantly like, when was the last time we had a 2-issue story? And it was completely satisfying, completely wrapped up, and yeah, really good, really good.
That's right.
All right, up next we have the Sandman Universe Nightmare Country, The Glass House, #1. This is James Tynion continuing the story from Nightmare Country. So he's the writer. Lisandro Esterin, who was the artist in the first volume of Nightmare Country, returns. Patricio Del Pesce does colors. Simon Bolin on letters. There's no kind of intermission type story with a different artist like we've had in past issues. This introduces a new character who appears much like the main character. I can't even remember what her name was, but the art college student who was the one who would see the Corinthian walking around, who could see monsters, who was eventually killed in the first issue. She had the ability to see the Corinthian and to see kind of the world behind the world that is Nightmare Country. And this guy, I don't know if we ever get his name, but he seems like he's going to be the main character. Matt, I think. Yeah,
Max.
Max. And it seems like he has that ability as well, much like the art school student did in the first issue. So we're introduced to him. We know he works in finance. A little bit tropey, right? And we start talking about things like, what was that movie with Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino?
Devil's Advocate.
Devil's Advocate, right? We've seen a lot of times in stories where, Satan comes to Earth or demons are here, and they're sort of legitimate businesses somewhere in finance, right? The whole idea of playing off the old cliche, money is the root of all evil, which actually isn't what was said. The love of money is the root of all evil. Certainly these financial corporations do seem to love money. So he's involved in this world of high finance. And of course that leads to a lot of depravity, and going to this bar called the King of Pain, where you can basically have anything you desire happen, like wild orgies are implied and all that sort of stuff. And this guy, Max, when we first meet him, he finally gets invited, right? Because they go to a regular nightclub first, and then his boss invites those he thinks are ready. And they go to this King of Pain bar / club, where once you go, you're on the list. And we come to find out that the financial institution that his boss, Ken, runs actually owns the King of Pain bar. So it's all wrapped up with the demon or fallen angel, however you want to look at it, Azazel, who we see at the end. So again, playing on the ideas that Tynion introduced in the first story, in the first volume of Nightmare Country. What I really, really enjoy is that the story that Tynion told in the first volume, it seemed pretty contained, pretty small, if you will. As much as it can be small, we're talking about demons and heaven and hell and all that sort of thing. But it seemed very much within its own confines, right? Like beginning, middle, end, other than the fact that obviously Satan, demons, whatever, are going to continue on. I mean, they're everlasting, they're immortal, right? But it seemed like that story was over and done with. And now what we're seeing is, when you add in the Corinthian, when you add in these demons and start talking about the sort of the wider world of Nightmare Country, it's much bigger and more complex than I originally had thought. I'm not the biggest Sandman universe fan. I read all of them when it was relaunched. It's been 4 or 5 years now. I mean, it was before the pandemic, maybe 2018 or so. So maybe 5 or 6 years. It's been that long. And I was on everything. Like, I was reading it all for about the first 2 or 3 issues. And I was like, you know what? This is just not for me. It didn't hold my interest. This holds my interest. This is interesting to me. And even the Lysandro Estrin art, because it's sort of color, or it's probably digitally painted, but it looks very watercolor. It's not, really sharp, clean art. The backgrounds at times are very light. So it's not usually the type of art that I would enjoy, but it suits the narrative and the tone of the story so well. It's, one of those situations where I really can't picture anybody else drawing the story. It just wouldn't look quite right. So really impressed with what Tynion is doing. He's really showing a flair for horror, which, I enjoyed his superhero work. So I do miss him doing traditional superhero stuff, but I have to admit that this feels like where he is at his best, things like Department of Truth, obviously Something is Killing the Children, this Nightmare Country, other things that he's done on his Substack and what have you, seems to be where his true passion lies. And when, as we've said so many times, when creators are having fun and really leaning into what they do best, the quality comes through in the work. You can tell they're having fun. You get their best work. You can look at, Scott Snyder's work that he's doing right now. Clear and Noctera and even We Have Demons. God, that stuff's so much better than any of his superhero stuff. And certainly his most recent things like, death metal and all that stuff that just really didn't land for me. The work he's doing now is so much better. So I really enjoyed this, like surprisingly so. Like I said, Nightmare Country is coming back. I didn't know we were getting a second volume of that. Yeah, the first one was okay. Let me dive in. And I enjoyed this way more than I thought I would. Like, I finished reading it and I was like, wow, that was really, really good. So Tynion is firing on all cylinders with this series. So what did you think?
Well, I thought it was a little bit tropey, and you actually nailed it right on the head. You said Devil's Advocate. This is pretty much plot for plot. It's the Devil's Advocate. It's just a kid named Max joins a high finance firm. He's very popular. He's very good, and he's waiting for the big invite to the party. And everyone knows that if you get invited to the party, you've made the big leagues. And of course, the head of the big party is this strange, very eccentric sort of boss who talks about the end of times, the biblical times, the end of times, very eccentric, sends him this big club, this King of Pain club. And then a woman shows up that he dreams of, he wants to talk to this girl again. He's surprisingly insecure for somebody who's apparently done very well in finance. And he's surprisingly insecure. And of course, typical low self-esteem kind of loser for suddenly. So he's really good at dealing with finance, but then he just wants to talk, I mean, not like most guys where you get a free hooker. I mean, you're going to take her, but no, this guy just wants to talk to her. Yeah, okay, whatever. So he's just going to talk to her. And literally it's I mean, the comment by another one of the demons, this Lord Azrael, is talking to one of his like demon minions at the end. And she's basically saying all he wants is to talk. That's a pretty low price for a soul, because apparently Max doesn't know that he's actually trading his soul here for where he's at. So it's kind of interesting. It's kind of sad and it's kind of pathetic in a way. But at the same time, everything I just said, I probably made it sound like I'm criticizing it. But I'm actually kind of curious to see why is the devil, supposedly the devil, why is he so concerned about this kid? I mean, why this is sort of I guess they're trying to, bargain for some souls. What's the point here? How does this involve the Corinthian? Because we know that the female character, whose name I also forget from the first series, she's now linked to the Corinthian. She's sort of the human host of the Corinthian. He can't do anything without her consent and approval. And so the Corinthian, in order to keep tabs on what the Corinthian is doing, they're kind of linked. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this all comes to play. And there's probably larger stakes here, that this King of Pain nightclub is probably a front for something far more evil and nefarious and clearly biblical in nature. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we should point out, I just realized, even though I haven't seen the movie in years, Devil's Advocate is a law firm, not a finance. Still, the point stands.
That's right.
Yeah, it is a little derivative. I would argue that finance guys may be even more evil than lawyers.
Who knows?
I'm not just saying that because Rocky's a lawyer either. I really do think they're all scumbags. So, present company excluded.
Of course.
Let's move on. Danger Street number 5, Manhunter. Tom King is the writer. Jorge Fornes does the art. Dave Stewart on colors. Clayton Cowell on letters. I'm going to let you go first on this one because I have a feeling you probably really enjoyed it.
I did. I actually really enjoyed. There's a wonderful battle here. I mean, the central gist of Danger Street is a series of comic book first issue one-shots that basically, from the 1970s, failed comic book series involving Warlord, involving the Lady Cop, involving codename Assassin character, involving the Dingbats of Danger Street, and how these all weave together. Tom King took the challenge of weaving all of these together in some kind of narrative, and he's managed to do it, and it essentially, this evolves around this sort of murder mystery, because ultimately Warlord and Starman in the first issue, in trying to attract the Justice League, they tried to attract Darkseid. They wanted to defeat Darkseid and hopefully to attract Justice League membership. Unfortunately, Darkseid never showed up. Instead, someone else did and ended up getting killed. And Starman ended up accidentally killing Good Looks, this young man who's a member of the Dingbats of Danger Street. And now the Dingbats of Danger Street, they want to kill Starman. They want to avenge the death of their friend. Lady Cop is investigating. Meanwhile, Warlord wants to dig up the body of Good Looks for reasons which I'm not quite clear on, to be quite honest with you. Meanwhile, we got the Creeper. We got the Creeper involved as well, whose alter ego is a reporter and who is being paid by the Green Team to foster fear against this imaginary group called the Outsiders. Batman takes issue with that. Batman confronts the Creeper in this issue by telling him to stop it, and Creeper basically tells him to go fly a kite. You can't tell me what to do. We got Manhunter, who ends up having a crisis of conscience. He confronts one of this evil movie producer who earlier on was. I can't even remember what the hell he did, what role he played. I'm sorry, my memory is all these things are linked, and I want to be clear on this point. This is the fault of me, the reader, because when this thing reads as a trade, this is going to read very smoothly, because I think you can tell all the things are happening quickly here. It's building to a head, and my favorite part of the issue is watching Starman and Orion fight. Orion, the son of Darkseid, fighting Starman because Orion is there to figure out, what's going on, because the Grand Master and Darkseid basically sent Orion on a mission there to find out, presumably who killed who was it? Atlas, right? Atlas was killed by Starman, but it was and I'm not even sure. I mean, it's basically just too much testosterone. Orion is filled with testosterone and attacks first. Starman, and so rather than just talk it out, Warlord tries to get them to talk it out, because I think they both have the same I think people are wondering exactly at this point, even we readers, we're wondering, what's the big deal here? We know that Atlas is dead and that supposedly the sky is falling, but other than that being sort of a biblical kind of reference, what does that really mean? What's the significance of Atlas? Granted, Atlas is a god of New Genesis, but what's the big deal that Atlas is dead? I mean, I know it's a big deal when a god dies, but really, what's the big deal? We don't really know yet. Meanwhile, we got we got these assassins against. We got the green team slowly being eliminated by the Manhunter, and codename Assassin trying his best to protect the members of the green team. But it looks like one of the members of the green team, this Houston character, wants to buy codename Assassin to basically use his brothers Abdul and Cecil as bait to basically have them be killed, you know, protect him over his brothers, and he'll pay him extra money. And so there's some betrayals going on even amongst the green team. And meanwhile, we got just an incredible sequence that I just love. Warlord is driving in the desert. Warlord and Starman go to the desert to dig up the body. To dig up the body of I think it must be Atlas. They're digging up the body of Atlas.
No, they're digging up Good Looks because they want to try to bring him. They want to bring him back to life to kind of make up for the mistake they made.
Okay, okay, all right. So they're digging up the body, and Warlord throws the coffin on the back of the car. He's driving back, and damn, if he doesn't get, he almost gets hit by the dingbats driving on a quad out to the desert to go to try to kill Starman. And meanwhile, Warlords almost hits them, and he screams at him and says, watch where you're going. And he ends up slamming into Lady Cop, and then the coffin flies off Warlord's car and crashes open. Meanwhile, Starman and Orion battle each other to a stalemate. Starman defeats Orion, but then faints afterwards. So this is an action-packed issue, and a lot happens. And there's a lot of moving parts here, but it doesn't feel. Again, I want to emphasize I'm not connecting all the dots in my head, but I really had a very enjoyable time reading this, and I only read it once. I'll definitely be reading it again. This is a really fun comic. This is good. This is probably my favorite issue so far, and I enjoyed the issues leading up to this. I got to tell you, this does not feel like a Tom King kind of story. This actually feels like this feels like a lot of fun, like it's going from somewhere. And I think I've said this before. This feels like I'm watching, like, what is it, Snatch, or that British movie, or those British movies, or a Tarantino movie where a billion things are happening and everything's colliding and everything's going to come in and happen all at once. It's a really good time.
Yeah. So, I don't know if it was a crisis of conscience for the Manhunter so much as codename Assassin was somehow using his powers like at a very long distance, and it ends up causing him a lot of trouble. Actually, he ends up fainting as he's backing up or bodyguarding one of the other members of the green team, because you see when Manhunter goes to pull the trigger, like there's this blue energy around his finger. It keeps him from pulling the trigger. And then later he's like screams at damn it. He throws the gun down and he goes to punch. And there's again, that blue energy stopping him from punching this movie producer who, yeah, complete despicable scumbag. Like, you always wonder about this green team. Interesting choice from Tom King to make the members of the green team, who are very young guys, to make them like completely despicable. Like, how can you be that young and that rich and so despicable? Like, who did you learn from to be such a scumbag at such an early age? I guess maybe in a lot of ways it's reinforcing that idea that, absolute power corrupts absolutely, because these guys have so much money that they can do anything they want. So you're right in talking about how interesting the story has been in terms of weaving together all these. I mean, I don't know if Tom King just took it upon himself. I'm going to take all these, first issue special characters and create stories with them that are so kind of wild and different and, not what you would expect at all. So, all the credit to Tom King for doing that. And yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I don't really know where it's going. I am a little confused.
Well, can I ask you a question? Like, what prevented? I don't understand. I never understood why the assassin fainted. Why did he faint?
So Codename Assassin was using his powers somehow
Well, what
to
powers
stop
does he have?
Manhunter.
He's never established what his powers are.
I don't know. I don't know what his powers are, but apparently he had the ability to know the actions, what Manhunter was doing in attempting to kill another one of the green team, and he was able to stop him somehow from all that distance away. But in doing so, it drained him to the point where he passed out. And that's why we're talking about the betrayal of the green team. And he says, yeah, it's so hard protecting all three of us that are left. Maybe just protect one. Because even Codename Assassin himself, he says that it was so hard trying to protect those people. He says it's difficult when there's distance. He talks about having to try to project his abilities or his powers or what have you. So again, I'm not that familiar with Codename Assassin. It may be that his powers haven't ever really been that well established, and Tom King has taken it upon himself to do that. But yeah, he is guarding another member of the green team, the one that we see the most, the one that's always behind the desk at the TV network or what have you, because you see him there. He's holding his hands to his forehead, and there's like some green dots or whatever. And it talks about a spell that he's casting to protect the other member of the green team.
What happened to the Manhunter here? Like, why did the Manhunter stop and initially not kill the movie producer? And his hand.
That's what I'm saying. He goes to pull the trigger. He stopped. He goes to punch him.
There's no trigger. He has a fist. Like, what trigger are you talking? Are you talking about?
Yeah, at the panel at the top.
So you're saying the assassin, the
panel at the bottom of the previous page. See how there's the blue kind of smoke or what have you? Yeah. Go scroll down right there. See that blue smoke?
Yeah.
That's the Codename Assassin stopping him from pulling the trigger on the gun. And so then he gets mad.
Oh my God.
He throws the gun down. He says, God damn it. And then he goes to punch him instead. And you see again, there's like that blue, purplish, grayish smoke that's stopping him. And so he gives up. He's like, some force is stopping me. Some force is this guy. And so he leaves. He goes to regroup. And then he comes back later when Codename Assassin is, I guess he's too tired to know what's going on, or maybe it's because he agrees with what the leader of the green team says and he's only going to protect him. And it appears as though Manhunter finishes the job by choking this movie producer in his sleep, this member of the green team that was working as a Hollywood scumbag, basically.
Wow.
So
I think that the color is screwed up because if that was, I had no idea that was the assassin. I never got that until you told me, but it makes absolute sense what you're telling me. But if the assassin, then his headache, it should have been the same color as the, they should have made his headache when he was touching his temples, they should have made that the same color as the purple that was causing the Manhunter to stop using it.
Yeah, you have to
have made the connection.
You have to read the narration by Dr. Fate is what gives it away. It says the spell was cast by another knight and that sort of thing, and you see him sort of fall down, and then that in context with what Codename Assassin says later about how difficult it is to try to protect at a great distance. That's when it really clicked for me. I'm like, oh, that's why he passed out, because he was the one that used his powers. He was the blue smoke or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't 100% clear. You kind of have to be paying close attention when you're reading it. But again, it's just really cool, really interesting ideas. But where my confusion comes in is like, I don't really understand the connection to, I think you said Grandmaster. It's Highfather, leader of the new gods. I don't really understand like why the death of Atlas has thrown the fourth world into chaos. Yeah. Like what does that have to do with everything that's going on, to the point that Darkseid and Highfather have to team up, these brutal, mortal enemies that are, complete nemesis of each other. Like they're teaming up. They send Orion not to get the body of Atlas, but to get the body of Good Looks. Like why, like, first of all, what did Atlas's death do? And maybe it was earlier and I'm forgetting why has Atlas's death caused, this catastrophe that's looming for the fourth world. So why is that the case? And what does Good Looks' body have to do with, that? Like, why
Yeah.
was Orion going to get Good Looks' body? Like, that's what I don't understand.
Yeah.
But again, everything else, and it may make more sense once we get the end of the story, as Tom King narratives often do. But you're right about the epic battle between Starman and Orion. I love Starman, who's this, very much obscure character. Obviously, like a lot of these characters are Dingbats of Danger Street. Warlord less so, but Lady Cop and certainly this version of Starman, he goes toe to toe with Orion. Orion, the son of Darkseid. So if you're not familiar with Orion, he's like the legitimate biological son of Darkseid, one of the most powerful beings in the DC universe. And in order to sort of seal a ceasefire that New Genesis and Apocalypse, these two planets of the fourth world, in order to seal the ceasefire that they agreed to, they traded sons, right? So Highfather sent his biological son, Scott-Free, who is Miracle Man, to be raised by Darkseid. Darkseid, threw him in, gave him the granted goodness basically to be tortured. Meanwhile, Highfather took Orion, this offspring, this biological offspring of Darkseid, who was, very rough and gruff and quick to anger and violence, and tried to raise him, with the best values of New Genesis. So, he's much more of an anti-hero, but he's Darkseid's son, so he loses his temper and he can be quick to anger and that sort of thing. But he's very powerful, extremely powerful. So the fact that this obscure version of Starman, when people say Starman, everybody thinks of the James Robinson run for the most part. Or maybe they think back to the Starman of the Golden Age. Very few may think of the Starman in the 80s, Will Patton. But there's been all these different versions, right? And this one, by far and away, the least well-known, version. He's an alien from another planet, blue skin, whatever. But man, he goes toe to toe with Orion. He actually beats Orion. The Dingbats of Danger Street show up, attracted by the explosions and lights and whatever of this battle. They show up and Starman's there. Orion's laying on the ground, vanquished. And then Starman kind of, as Rocky said, they fight to a stalemate. Starman can't stay conscious either, and he passes out. But oh my God, like this guy went toe to toe with Orion and took him out. Almost, was the victor, but it ends up being kind of a mutual knockout. Yeah. So again, just like really cool ideas. And I haven't even mentioned like the fact that the Dingbats want to get revenge for the death of their compatriot Good Looks.
And they might get it too. They might get it too, because the one Dingbat, there's with Starman passed out, he can put a bullet in Starman's head and get revenge right then and there. So
the cliffhanger ending, non-fat with the gun, about to walk up and put a cap in Starman's ass, I guess you'd say. But again, the idea, like here it's the Dingbats of Danger Street, right? Again, obscure characters have shown up here and there, mostly in that first issue special, but kind of at the time when they were created, I feel like it was sort of an update of the Newsboy Legion. I mean, these are not characters that would ascribe these sorts of emotions, this idea of revenge and wanting to kill. So a little meta and talking about, I don't know if Tom King is purposely talking about gun violence or just kind of the angst of youth taken to the nth degree that we have in our current culture, unfortunately. So there's a lot to unpack here. Again, excellent work from Tom King. Gorgeous art by Jorge Fornes that really grounds it all. And the flowery narration, this sort of fantasy tale, this Arthurian legend narration from Dr. Fate's helmet, which, the helmet of fate, it's just fantastic. Like, it's so fun. Like, it's not this. I didn't know what to think. I mean, when the series was first announced, I was like, what the hell is Tom doing now? This sounds so weird and out there. I trusted it would be good because I trust Tom King, but this has far exceeded any sort of expectations that I had. It's just really, really been a great ride. So can't wait to see where it goes next. All right. Speaking of exceeding expectations, Superman Lost #2 from writer Christopher Priest on plot and script. Carlo Pagulian handles plot and pencils. Jason Paz, his longtime collaborator, and does inks. Jeremy Cox on colors, who often inks or colors rather Pagulian, and then Willie Schubert does letters. First issue was a bit of a setup. Talked about how Superman ended up light years from Earth. Here we see the first aftermath of that. We get a little bit in the present time, Superman back in his apartment in Metropolis. We see some of the after effects, the fact that he's not breathing when he sleeps because he's so used to holding his breath from being out in space for so long. We get some hints that Lois and Batman are still worried about Clark, and also Batman's doing a little bit of legwork for the whole political investigation expose that Lois Lane is working on. But the vast majority of the issue is Superman, when he's first out in space, trying to figure out where he is and how he possibly can get home. And it moves up the plot once you get out into space, moves pretty quickly. In those moments, we do get some good character moments. We do get some good exposition, and we do get some sort of good contextual pieces that help us understand that Superman is out there and isolated and alone. But in between these different vignettes, if you will, where Superman's on this particular planet or on this particular spaceship or on this particular location, a lot of time passes, right? Like we see him there moments after apparently he arrived after stopping the singularity, which we get some context when he's telling the story of that to these aliens that pick him up moments after he was transported all this distance. And they're like shocked. Oh my God, you stopped a singularity. How is that possible? And then, they say, oh, we tracked where you're from. We can send you home. You just have to give us these credits. He's like, I don't have any money. And they just dump him. They're like, what? You have no money? I mean, they're out there. They're traders. Bottom line is they want dollars or credits or whatever, the currency might be. Superman can't give it to him, and they just abandon him. And then he's, on this other planet. And again, we get some context. But in between the two, by the end of the issue, weeks, if not months, have gone by that he's been out there, and he runs into this guy on another planet, not unlike Earth. It's very disparate in terms of what the environment looks like. He's in this one locale, and it's like the green fields of Kansas. He's in another place on the same planet, and everything is toxic and sort of post-apocalyptic. And there's hints that the world is very divided. They can't come together as one. But when Superman, when he's asked by one of the citizens of this planet, how long have you been out here? He's like, I can't even tell you. When there's not a sunrise or a sunset, it's hard, and you're just out here isolated and alone. It's hard to tell how much time's gone by, weeks, months, maybe. So in terms of pacing, even though in those individual moments, you get some good character moments and great sort of feel for what Superman's going through, it really is moving along quite quickly here. Like, weeks to months have gone by since that first issue, since Superman closing the singularity. So I'm really into this, not least of which is the Carlo Pagulian art. The line work is excellent. I would not have necessarily expected this from Pagulian because, again, like I'm most familiar with his work where he previously worked with Christopher Priest on the Deathstroke miniseries, which was very street, very urban, very grounded, down to earth. You're talking about blade weapons and guns and that sort of thing. So to have him be doing the most fantastical stuff with Superman out in space, drawing alien architecture and alien landscape and what have you, absolutely gorgeous. I love his take on Superman. And we even get a new costume from Superman on the final page that's all white with the Superman emblem on his chest, standing out more than ever. He's got an oxygen mask, as we've seen Superman have in my favorite Superman in space stories of all time, Exile from Roger Stern way back in the day. This reminder that Superman does need to breathe like once in a while. He can hold his breath for a really, really, really long time, but he does need oxygen once in a while. And kind of on that note, there are hints here. Priest says a few times about the way solar radiation interacts with Kryptonian biochemistry and biology, and it has to do not only with the solar radiation, but also with gravity and how it sort of affects Kryptonian cells. So that's a little bit of a new take. I'm sure Christopher Priest has been sitting on that for a long time, and I love it. It makes perfect sense. And again, this is a powerful Superman, but not, invulnerable, not completely indestructible. He does need to breathe. And so it's marrying the best parts of different eras of Superman together in a really interesting way. And the only thing I'm just not sure about, as I mentioned previously when we covered the first, like in terms of what Philip Kennedy Johnson is doing, Superman traveled light, years in no time at all when he was battling Luthor. So I guess you just kind of have to take that with a grain of salt, because this looks like it's going to be a really fun story. Why it took him so long to get back, why what he's carrying around, because he felt he was gone, for what did he say, like 20 years or something. For Lois, it was only, a matter of minutes. How we reconcile that, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. The last time we had some Superman shenanigans with time moving differently for different characters, we got John Kent aged up, and we all know how that was received. So I'm sure fewer people are paying attention to this, although they should be, because again, it's an interesting story, and the art and colors are absolutely fantastic. So I really enjoyed this. I don't really have much else to add. It was just fantastic. Blew me away. So enjoyable. What are your thoughts?
I never enjoyed it as much as you did, but I didn't mind it. I just thought it was, I actually thought nothing much happened in it. I thought it was a little bit boring, to be honest. But hearing you talk about it, I actually get more excited about it. So you have my compliments, my friend. I never really paid much attention to the. I was more interested in the moments, frankly, between Lois and Superman. I'm actually less interested in terms of what happened to him in the 20 years. I can imagine he had all kinds of things happen to him in 20 years. I kind of like not knowing, because I like that being a mystery. And the most poignant scenes for me were the very beginning, where, Lois, looks in on him in their bedroom, and he's coiled up in a fetal position. And he's not breathing because he's used to not. You can imagine he's used to holding his breath for long periods of a time. So you can imagine, how long did he spend floating in space? He's
not even in the bed. He's laying on the floor.
Well, that's just it. And so I like, so you got to ask yourself, oh my God, this, you talk about PTSD, with that, there's that, post-traumatic stress syndrome, or, disorder, PTSD, whatever the Superman equivalent is, or Kryptonian equivalent of that. Did he in fact have some of that, or like what exactly happened to him? I actually kind of like the fact that we're not, I kind of like discovering what happened to Clark in the present. Let's find out as Lois finds out. And of course, we're getting the flashback here. The flashbacks, the flashback was kind of humorous. I mean, he comes across these aliens actually help him out. They screw up. They misread his physiology. They feed him carbon dioxide instead of oxygen, and so he kind of pukes and throws up first. And then they're nice enough. The sad part is these aliens actually locate Earth for him and are more than prepared to send him back to Earth. They will actually fly him to Earth, but they need 3,200 credits. Of course, Superman has no money, and so they immediately deject him, and they shoot him down on this planet. And then he lands, he's on this planet, and he flies around this planet. And the art's absolutely beautiful. I mean, the art is really fantastic. And as he's being shot down on this planet, the revelation, which you alluded to, the fact that apparently if a planet has two moons, the gravity and between the gravity and something else, it might impact his ability to fly and to maneuver. And so, like you said, that is new. That's new to canon, I believe. And again, it did feel like he's had a lot happen to him in this issue, and it makes you wonder, at the end here, Christopher Priest he's one for. He can really decompress a story. I think he's doing that in Black Adam. Just because you have 12 issues, just because they assign you 12 issues doesn't mean you have to tell them you need 12 issues to tell the story when it doesn't really merit it. But that's another comic. But the art here is fantastic. I love the all white suit. The way it's artistically rendered is gorgeous. Clearly, I'm guessing the white costume must have some scientific reason in order to maybe hold solar energy or solar power long enough so he can maintain enough power for space flight for as great a distance as possible. I kind of like the way it looks. Clearly, he's thinking about going home and making his way home. And, he's bound and determined. But clearly, we know that he doesn't get there for an awfully long time, at least in his mind. But But for me, the most powerful moments were the first 4 or 5 pages where he's just in that fetal position, and I'm wondering what the hell happened to this guy. But I thought it was kind of a meh issue when I read it, but now upon pondering it and hearing your thoughts, I think it's a better issue than I gave it credit for.
Yeah, again, I think there's just a lot there, and you bring up a really interesting point actually about the white suit. So one of my favorite stories back in the New Adventures of Superboy, which is a series from the early to mid '80s, in the backup story actually, Superboy gets a new costume, and instead of the costume being mostly blue,
Yeah.
it's yellow. It's mostly yellow, and when he's out there fighting, like he feels bullets more than he normally would. They still don't pierce his skin, and he has a harder time flying, and his strength isn't quite what it is. And
I remember that story.
Yeah. So Ma Kent had created this new costume for him to give him something different. And what he discovers is, because it's the way color works in the world, because it's yellow, that's because yellow is what's being reflected, right? Yellow's hitting the material, like all light, all the visible spectrum is hitting the suit, and the one that's the wavelength that's being reflected back is yellow. And we all know, light from the yellow sun gives him his power. So he wasn't absorbing as much yellow light because the costume was mostly yellow. And so he realized, I never wear a yellow costume. He's got to wear, something different. It was just so fun and so interesting. And so as you're saying, oh yeah, this white suit, maybe it has to do with whatever. So white, the color white, if you will, is actually all colors being reflected, nothing being absorbed. And black is all colors being absorbed and reflecting nothing. So you wonder, is he going to have the same problem, right? Like, he's out there trying to fly.
I don't know.
He's not going to be absorbing as much, because if you look at it, he's all cut. You see it on the cover there. Rocky has, if you're watching this on YouTube. The only part of his skin that's not covered is his face. So how is he going to be absorbing any radiation? But who knows? Maybe this is a special suit that is somehow facilitating, more yellow sunlight being absorbed, or yellow radiation being absorbed, or what have you. So really interesting things to think about when we talk about the way science works, at least science in comics. So all right. Anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Multiversity. Harley screws up the DC Universe issue 2. Did you read this?
I did. I gave it a couple, 2 skim reads. Why? You want me to talk about it?
Yeah. I mean, again, I didn't read the first issue. This is just not for me. Frank Thierry does words, it says. Logan Fairbairn on pictures. So I literally didn't even open it. So if you have anything to add, feel free.
Well,
we can.
Yeah, well, I will say that, look, I mean, writer Frank Thierry, I think one of the things, through no fault of his own, is that maybe, I'm assuming that when he read this, he probably didn't know that it would come out at a time when I think that we readers of DC Comics, I think we're slightly over inundated with multiversal stories where there's multiversal consequences and everything else. And this happens to come out at a time where we already had a Harley Who Laughs, and we already had a multiversal adventure for Harley. But having said that, I wanted to give this a fair shake, and I did have the time to read it. And this is a Starro story. So I immediately, it opens up where you immediately see Starro, and basically the central gist of it is Starro and all his little Starros have sort of taken over the world, and it's revealed by the end of the issue that they've actually taken over all of time and space. Now, I immediately thought of the Suicide Squad movie, which is a movie that I absolutely love, and I can't believe didn't make $1 billion, but that's just the way it was. If I love a movie, it doesn't make a lot at the box office, but I love the Suicide Squad. I love Starro. I love that movie, and I love how Harley Quinn took out Starro at the end of that movie. It was just awesome when she jumps into the eye. Anyways, so I have to admit, that's sort of what pulled me into this right away when I started to look into it. And she meets another version of herself, another Harley from another multiverse, another Earth that was was that whose formative origin didn't have to do with the Joker, but this other Harley's formative origin was because of Starro. She was taken over by Starro, and she because she ate something that the Starro stuck to her face didn't like, and so that weakened it, and she ripped it off, and she became the Harley Quinn of her universe, and now she's basically coming over to ours to help save ours with the help of our Harley. Basically, in a nutshell. And Red Tool, her Harley's sidekick, Red Tool, is he's kind of like the main. He's taken over by Star, and he's the main bad guy. And it is fun. It is. I'm not a big fan of Frank Thier's. The humor didn't land for me. The jokes didn't land for me. But it is fun, and the art really is, the art's really good. It's stylistic. It might not be for everyone, but I mean, I gotta give, the art it's very detailed. The backgrounds are great, the blood and the guts, the layouts. I mean, the whap, the chalk, the cracks, the onomatopoeia. What's that fancy word? All those. Yeah, thank you. You said it. I'm not going to attempt to say it. I'll just butcher it. But no, there's fun to be had here. I mean, it's not my kind of Harley. It's not my favorite iteration of Harley. But if you've been a fan of the Harley Quinn run during the Jimmy Palmiotti, Amanda Conner, and Frank Thierry, he's written Harley before. I think people would enjoy this, and it does end. I mean, there's more issues there. I think this is 6 issues long. So now we're going to be getting Starro taking over time itself, and so we're going to be seeing Harley jump through various bits and pieces and time periods of the DC universe. So it might be really fun. I'm really curious to see what characters of the DC universe Frank Thierry has Harley make fun of. So it'll be interesting to see where it is moving forward.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's move on to last book we're going to talk about in detail. Excuse me. So we have Lazarus Planet, Revenge of the Gods, Part 3. This is from writer G. Willow Wilson, pencils by Emanuela Lupacchino and Cian Tormey, inks by Lupacchino and Raul Fernandez, colors by Jordi Belair, letters by Pratt Brosso. And then there is a backup story that focuses on Nubia and the Amazons that are still on Themyscira, called Divine Intervention. That's written by Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad, Aletha Martinez on pencils, Mark Morales and John Livesey on inks, Alex Guermas does colors, and Becca Carey on letters. So I'm actually, this is starting to pull me in a little bit. We know that the Wonder Woman run lately has been a bit of a mess, but it feels like we're finally getting some momentum. It feels like we're moving towards something. And I'm enjoying it. And part of what I'm really enjoying about this is not a Wonder Woman book. And what I mean by that is when you read Wonder Woman, the regular Wonder Woman title, it has a lot of the same feel of this. Maybe the dialogue isn't quite as sharp. The storytelling isn't quite as crisp and clean. But it feels similar in that Wonder Woman is just one character amongst many who are part of the book. It's very much an ensemble book. That works for this, right? Because this is not a Wonder Woman book. The problem I have with it in Wonder Woman is if you're a Wonder Woman fan, you pick up a book called Wonder Woman, you expect Wonder Woman to be kind of the star of the show. She needs to be the protagonist. She needs to be the, kind of the smartest person. And if she makes mistakes, she needs to, redeem herself in the eyes of the reader. That hasn't been the case with what's been going on in Wonder Woman. At times, she's felt like an afterthought in her own book. And again, in this book, she's just part of a larger narrative that's going on with Yara Flor, with Shazam, with Cheetah, with the gods, even with her mother Hippolyta, who finally makes an appearance in the backup story. So I'm enjoying this a lot more than I thought I would. Maybe it's because I just had zero expectations with what we got with Lazarus Planet, which was kind of an underwhelming event. I think the art is really solid. The only nitpick I have is when the gods do show up on Earth and they're about to go to war with Wonder Woman and her compatriots. It's like they have this giant army, right? Like you would expect of an Olympian army. And it's like, really? Wonder Woman's going to raise an army to fight against them, and it's going to be like Etta Candy and Steve Trevor and Cheetah? Like, these are not people who even, Cheetah has superpowers, but Etta Candy and Steve Trevor, they don't even have powers, right? Siegfried, I guess you could argue, pretty formidable with a sword, but still, right? I mean, these guys are going to call down lightning. It seems like it would be a slaughter in no time. So that doesn't really have much of a ring of truth to it. But I can kind of set that aside because for the most part, this main story I'm enjoying, and I see the end in sight. And obviously, we hope that it leads to a satisfying conclusion, because we know we have Tom King's Amazonian terrorist type story coming later this year. So we'll see how that all plays out. But what were your thoughts?
Well, you know what? I actually know exactly where you're coming from, that this does feel better. This is a substantially better Wonder Woman story. And that is not saying much at all. That's my opinion, because this is still, I could go on a rant on this. And let me just start with this. First of all, I understand this is better than what we've been getting from Wonder Woman in the last year. There's no question. And it is kind of interesting, this revenge of the god, war of the, whatever revenge the gods are trying to get, war against, trying to defeat mankind or humanity in order to create fear. So fear is close to worship, and then that'll power up the gods. And in this issue, it's revealed that Hippolyta, working behind the scenes, which of course we've been told this, we've never been shown this at any point despite all these issues. Hippolyta's apparently been talking to other gods, trying to create her own team of gods to go against Hera, because she knows what Hera's been up to. Hippolyta doesn't bother, to give Wonder Woman, her own daughter, a heads up, or the Amazons a heads up, or anybody a heads up. But, that's besides the point. But thank God Hippolyta has done all this. Last issue, we Wonder Woman's stupidity was on full display when she, actually it was 2 issues ago, when she made a deal with Hera. She actually believed Hera. Hera said she would give Wonder Woman godhood. In exchange, she would protect the Amazons from what the gods would do to humanity. And of course, Wonder Woman said yes, presumably with the idea that she was going to be granted this godhood, become a goddess, and then defeat Hera once she gets these powers. Of course, Hera's not as stupid as that. And much to Wonder Woman's chagrin, Hera never granted her godhood, but in fact tied her to the cliffs of Promethea, where she was ultimately rescued by a man who she was completely ungrateful for being rescued by this man. And in this issue, this man is revealed to be Ares himself. Ares himself. Last issue, we also had Shazam, Billy Batson. The wizard stripped him of his powers, but instead of being turned back into Billy Batson, he was just a shriveled up Shazam. And in this issue, Hippolyta apparently now has the power to grant powers. All she had to do was touch Billy Batson's, or all she had to do is she touched Shazam's forehead. And lo and behold, upon touching Shazam's forehead, he got his powers back. And even though, doesn't make any sense, actually, she says, though I am not one of your patrons, I bless you. You must defend your world, though it will take all the strength you have left. So apparently just Hippolyta's blessing will allow Billy, Shazam, to access all his powers, despite the fact that the wizard took them away. That really doesn't make a lot of sense. Now we could say maybe it's cool, but it doesn't, again, how can Hippolyta just undo what the wizard did? That doesn't make much sense. But one of the irony here, one of my biggest beefs about all this, is that we got all these tough warriors. There's only one person in this entire story so far, other than a couple of children in a couple of panels in the first few issues, that there's only one person that's been crying like a suck, crying like a little baby, and that's Wonder Woman herself. She's crying. She cries in this issue. Wonder Woman cries. She cries. What have I done? She's sobbing. Is this what a hero does? Is this what a hero does? This bothers me. Cheetah comes up to her. She needs to be consoled by a psychopath, Cheetah. And then, Cheetah even tells her, I told you, you shouldn't have tried negotiating with the gods. And then she says, how do we fight them, Barbara? How do we fight all the gods at once? And she's sobbing. Talk about a stupid question. I bet you if you poll just the idiots of the DC universe, every citizen with an IQ above, let's say below 80, I'm sure any one of them could tell you how you're going to defeat the Greek gods. How about calling the Teen Titans or the Justice League? I mean, is this really a question that Wonder Woman should be asking? I can't believe that she's this pathetic. She's, I mean, she's a guest star almost in her own book, which I suppose is fine because, I mean, when you treat her this badly and she's not doing much in her own comic, why on earth would you want to elevate her? And then, of course, thank God Ares shows up. He's the man of mystery. He's the guy dressed in black. Finally, that guy shows up. Now, of course, Ares, I'm sure, is going to end up being shown to be corrupt and everything else. How can I predict that? Because he's a man, and he's Ares, he's the god of war, and he's going to end up being the bad guy, and Wonder Woman at some point is going to stop crying, I hope, and then get on the battlefield and actually do something. But these little things just irritate me. But having said all that, having said all that, we did get some action here. We got a backup here, Nubia. Philippus, the lover of Hippolyta, desperately goes to the altar of Hippolyta and asks for help, and that's where Hippolyta comes down and says, "I will help you," and she kisses her former lover, and of course, that's how Hippolyta comes back on the scene, and she's going to empower the Amazons, and then all the goddesses, who, of course, have been nowhere to be found. Suddenly, all the former patron goddesses of the Amazons, who've been completely absent from the beginning, completely allowed Hera to do whatever she wanted, allow Hera to wreak all this havoc on mankind. I mean, just I say again, the logic and the reasoning and the indifference. And now to allow this destruction, and then to allow destruction to happen that you could have stopped. And then, as these Amazon goddesses, patron goddesses have done, only at the 11th hour come back once all this destruction on humanity has been wrought. Now come back and try to play hero. It just seems, that's how it plays out to me. And, it's just, this is one of the reasons why I have such a distaste. I don't mind if you're going to write gods that way. Because gods, if you want to make them indifferent and evil and everything else. But when you make Wonder Woman pathetic, when you make her sobbing, when you make her worship these tyrannical gods and even resurrect them, that's what drives me crazy. And so I can enjoy this for what it is. Thank God for Billy Batson Shazam. I hope he has a day in the sun. He hasn't had one yet in this storyline. He's been made to feel like an idiot. Yara Flor is apparently more intelligent than Shazam. He's got the wisdom of Solomon. And but in any event, I had to get that out. I'm sorry, but am I enjoying this? Yes, this is a better Wonder Woman story that's been told in probably many a year. But again, it could still be better, my friend. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, I think that goes without saying. It's been problematic. It just maybe it shows just how bad the Wonder Woman title has been. That I don't know. I obviously enjoyed this more than you did, but yeah, it's still problematic. And the other thing is, you mentioned plenty of stuff about what happened in the backup story. Like, there's no reason that it should be a backup. You know what I mean? Like, it's so intertwined with what's going on in the main story. So I'm not really clear why it's different. Like, why does it need to be its own separate thing? Just give us those pages, interspersed amongst the regular story. So anyway, well, that does it for the books that we're going to talk about in detail. As I said, there are a few other titles out this week in terms of single issues. Batman and Scooby-Doo Mysteries #7. Batman The Audio Adventures Continue Season 3, number 4. And as far as collections go, we've got Detective Comics Volume 4, Riddle Me This, which was that really weird story that we got after the Mariko Tamaki run with Riddler, and he was podcasting and all that sort of thing. It collects Detective Comics 1059 through 1061. And then we've got Superman, Son of Kal-El, Volume 1, which collects Tom Taylor, his Superman, Son of Kal-El 1 through 6. And then finally, Future State Gotham, Volume 3, Batman at War, trade paperback, which collects Future State Gotham number 13 through 18, which neither Rocky nor I were big fans of. So you can read that at your own risk. I'll just put it that way. So yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. You want to give your book of the week?
Yeah, my book of the week is I have to go with Danger Street.
Okay, so that's not a bad pick at all. I think for me, I have to go with the Superman Lost. That for me was my favorite book of the week. Just from the costume to uh, the angst that you talked about with the trauma to the Carlo Pagulian art. For me, I mean, I know I'm biased because Superman's my favorite character, but yeah, for me that was my favorite book. Although, Danger State was fantastic as well. But you picked that, so I'll go with Superman. So.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode. As I said, everybody, we appreciate you joining us as always. Don't forget to head over to YouTube if you have not already. Search for Rocky's channel, and you know what to do when you get there. Ring the notification bell, subscribe, smash the like button, leave some comments below. We love interacting on there. It's Comic Space Boom! Conversely, if you've always watched us on YouTube and you're curious about the other audio-only content, which is about to start ramping up again on the Comic Source podcast, just go to wherever you get your podcasts, do a search for the Comic Source, and subscribe. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.